teacher at Institute of Technology of Georgia in the United States of America, Ms. Valeriya Chekalina. You are going to submit as well this survey to give an insight of this day, and as well to speak about what are these places for us as well to grow, and as well for this field to grow. As explained at the same start, this is the first time when at international school level we're doing these kind of events. So therefore, again, I'd like to stress the word pioneers. And we still have some minutes. Maybe I can pass the microphone and ask the typical question that I'm asking to my students. So what's the takeaway? What's the thing you are going to take away with you after today's activities? So maybe we can start here, and then you can pass.
Well, honestly, today I escaped from my school because I knew that something great will happen here. I've got a very good intuition. Actually, many ideas.
Let's use this one. Sorry.
Okay. I've got so many interesting ideas about how to teach, and I am really happy and appreciate what you did for me and for other teachers, because I will bring ideas also to my colleagues in gymnasia. It really worth to visit it because I saw so interesting and very professional approach in teaching. All workshops I attended were really, really great. So I want to say thank you for this great job, and I do hope that it will continue in your school. It's really, really good level, high level. Thank you so much.
Lovely, thank you. But let's keep this short because we have 5 minutes only, and Ms. Valeriya is on the line and she's ready to start quite soon. Please.
Hello, Valerija. First of all, and thank you, Edwards, for organizing this. This is amazing. For the first time, making this is quite not only for the first time, but just in general, just really, really good job on making everything happen, like organizing the Zoom and the here, and like really good job. And thank you for encouraging me to participate. And also, I can agree that the presentation that I listened to as well were inspiring, and I wrote things down that I will definitely think about and use. So thank you.
Thank you. So this has been called as thank you for thank you and thank you. Please.
Thank you a lot. So I wrote down, actually, you can see many points how to encourage my teachers in my school. And I hope that you'll continue to organize the conference next year and for next year. And there will be more teachers who are here and who will listen to the ideas that come from all over the world, not only from Latvia. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, my takeaway was that 20 minutes is not long enough for each session. I got a lot out of the sessions. It would have been nice to continue them and do more discussions and workshops, but it was really wonderful.
But let's take this as a takeaway for us from the organizational perspective, as that's the place for improvement. So to offer various types of activities within the day. Thank you. Yeah, we have two speakers here as well.
I want to sip on.
Well, I want to thank you personally for pushing me. But it was a great opportunity just to for us as teachers to share. We not often do that very well. The takeaway that I had today was the interdisciplinary approach and how the job that we all do, it's related and it's interconnected. And I think that, to me, that is gonna, what we have impact on me. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar's, for this conference as well. And what I picked up today was definitely new approaches to the education, and it was a very nice experience to become a student myself for one more day again, looking at other teachers. Thank you.
Great, great. Welcome again.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I would like to thank all of the speakers for inspiration.
Inspiration, that's a keyword, right, thought.
My takeaway would be definitely connected with stress management, and I agree thank you so much for that. I agree that it's the same, basically, the idea I wanted to bring, that if we want to teach one thing to the students, we have to comprehend it themselves. So stress management, here we go. And definitely the whole organization of the conference is just spectacular. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And for students, maybe we can hear something from students, as students had their first attempt within our school to help within the event. Maybe one of you, just 3 or 4 words. Rehab, you're a perfect speaker, let's go.
Okay, so I visited some of the lectures, some of the workshop today, and I really liked that every speaker that I heard, they were really different in some way in their approaches of learning, and the main idea of each speaker was different. That was really valuable to hear. So, yeah.
So great to hear, and we have one more participant here. I'm going to give the microphone for you. Here you go.
Thanks for this event, very good organization. I have very impression with ideas and colleagues. Very well, thank you.
Thank you. And we see Miss Valeriya. Hello, Valeriya. How are you?
Fine. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Is it possible to see? Oh, yeah, it is possible to see you. Can we double click on her picture and our spotlight her?
Sure. Now comes time to mention another scaffolding strategy, contextualization. I avoid using translation in class and always try to provide verbal contextualization by creating analogies based on students' knowledge and experience. For instance, I won't translate a word that they do not know, but either come up with a synonym or an antonym that they most likely know, or provide an explanation. For example, if they do not know the word writer, I will give them an example of Dostoevsky or Charles Dickens, who were writers. If the students do not know a word poem, I will say that Robert Frost or Emily Dickinson used to write poems and that they are called poets. And I will introduce, for example, Pushkin as a Russian poet. If the students do not know the word book cover, I will simply show them the cover. If they do not know what a publishing house is, I will show them the flyleaf of the book and point to the name of the publishing house. I believe that vocabulary semantization can be done without translation, without jumping between the target language to the native language of the learners or to the bridge language. However, all such vocabulary work has to be scaffolded. The same is true with grammar work. I never tell my students something like, today we are going to learn how to make compound sentences with the conjunction which in Russian language, because such a phrase would serve as a stumbling block, switching all the interest and all the brain work off and immersing students into deep, deep sleep. Instead, I would rather present them with a few words and ask to define them. For example, what is a library? And in order to give a definition of a library, students will have to use a structure with conjunction which, because a library is a building or a room which contains collection of books, which people read or borrow or refer to. If my students need to tell me the year or the century when their favorite writer was born, they need to know the locative case. If they want to go further and tell me the date of the writer's birth, they need to know the genitive case. In order to say the dates correctly, we need to revise cardinal and ordinal numbers. To speak about writers, the students have to know how Russian or foreign names and surnames are declined. So contextualization is the meaningful use of language for real communicative purposes. I'm sure that authentic learning experiences are achieved when a scaffolded task, activity, or assignment is associated with a result or outcome that has clear meaning and relatively immediate value to the student. So contextualizing points to the essence of tasks at hand, makes it situation dependent by means of explanation through the use of pictures, videos, graphs, and other objects or sources of information utilized to construct meaning. By the way, metaphoric language works really well with this scaffolding strategy when we need to construct meaning. Metaphor is a powerful cognitive tool that is used not only in fiction, but in science too. Metaphor can play an explanatory role. For example, in physics, the atom is compared to a miniature solar system, as well as in computing science, a computer virus versus a biological virus. A few days ago, I was watching a famous documentary with a physicist, Richard Feynman, Fun to Imagine, where he says that science takes a lot of imagination. And since I have done quite a lot of talking, I can not now deny myself the pleasure of sharing a short video with you. Here, Richard Feynman is talking about atoms. He explains to non-experts what atoms are, and he does it very clearly using metaphoric language. So let me share the screen once again with the sound so that you would be able to watch this video. Just a moment. Okay, so here we are, and
We can see only the presentation.
Yeah, I can see that. Where is Richard Feynman? Just a moment. I'll try to find him. Oh, here he is. Okay, I'm sharing with the sound. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a really short piece, but it's amazing.
It's interesting that some people find science so easy and others find it kind of dull and difficult. Especially kids, you know, some of them are just eat it up. And I don't know why it is. It's the same perhaps for all subjects. For instance, lots of people love music and I never could carry a tune. And I lose a great deal of pleasure out of that. And I think people lose a lot of pleasure who find science dull. In the case of science, I think that one of the things that make it very difficult is it takes a lot of imagination. It's very hard to imagine all the crazy things that things really are like. Nothing's really as it seems. We're used to get, you know, hot and cold, and all that hot and cold is the speeds that the atoms are jiggling. If they jiggle more, it corresponds to hotter, and colder is jiggling less. So if you have a bunch of atoms, a cup of coffee or something sitting on a table, and the atoms are jiggling a great deal in the coffee, and they bounce against the cup, and the cup then gets shaking, and the atoms in the cup shake, and they bounce against the saucer, and the heat heats the cup and heats everything else. And hot thing spreads its heat into other things by mere contact, because the atoms that are jiggling a lot in the hot thing shake the ones that are jiggling only a little bit in the cold thing, so that the hot heat, we say, goes into the cold thing. It spreads. But what's spreading is just jiggling and irregular motions, which is easy to kind of understand. It brings up another thing that's kind of curious. That I say the things jiggle, and if you're used to balls bouncing, you know they slow up and stop after a while. But we have to imagine with the atoms a perfect elasticity. They never lose any energy. Every time they bounce, they keep on bouncing all the time. They don't lose anything. They're perpetually moving. And that the things that happen when we say something loses energy, if a ball comes down and bounces, it shakes irregularly some of the atoms in the floor. And then when it comes up again, it leaves some of those atoms moving, the jiggling. So as it bounces, it's passing its extra energies, its extra motions, to little patches on the floor each time it bounces, and loses a little each time until it settles down, we say, as if all the motion has stopped. But what's left is the floor is shaking more than it was before, and the atoms in the ball are shaking more than they were before. That the organized motion of all these atoms moving the same way, falling down, and the quiet floor is now transformed into a ball sitting on the ground, but all that motion is still there in a form, or the energy of motion, in the form of the jiggling of the floor, which is a little bit warmer. Unbelievable. But anybody who's hammered a great deal on something knows that it's true, that if you pound something and hit it a lot, you can feel the temperature difference. It heats up. It heats up simply because you're jiggling it. This picture of Adam.
It's a beautiful picture. And so what is Feynman achieving in this video? He's constructing meaning through the use of the metaphor. And he encourages us, non-experts in physics, to imagine things in the physical realm very vividly. And I'm returning back to my presentation. And here is. And here is the quotation about imagination from Richard Feynman. Yeah, that metaphors help us imagine things. The next scaffolding strategy is schema building. When students discover connections with my or peer assistants. For example, the students have already learned that to answer a question where in Russian language, you need to put a word that denotes the location into locative case. They also probably already know that locative case can be used in other situations. For example, to answer when question while referring to a year or a month. If the students are asked what this or that book is about, they again have to use locative case in Russian, because the Russian preposition about is followed by locative case. And that is how the meaning, and that is how the mental grammar map is being built. So once they master the form, the endings of nouns and adjectives in locative case, we can introduce new situations when this form is used. And that is a very important stage of scaffolding, because for the students to be able to derive meaning while learning, information must be combined with conceptual understanding, utilizing an organized framework. This is how our brains process new information. So before we have reached this stage of our scaffolding process, we have already done modeling. So we know where we are heading, and we have already explored the anatomy of our model. We know what the skeleton and the body of our model are to be built from. The skeleton is our grammar, and the body is our vocabulary. The body can be thin if we do not know a lot of words. However, it is just fine, as the crucial part of the model is its skeleton. Without the skeleton, it cannot survive. So now we need to animate our Vitruvian man and make him perform some action. That is another scaffolding strategy, when our model is brought to life and forced to function in real communication. This is the stage when students are assigned communicative tasks. For example, students could be asked to imagine that a student from Russia is expected to visit their class for a discussion of the reading habits and preferences of learners of Russian as a second language and other people living in the country. And in preparation for this discussion, students will have to come up with detailed answers to a list of questions. For example, what do you read for pleasure? How does what you read differ from what your parents or friends read? How do you choose what to read? Do you buy paper books or do you read e-books? Do you like to go to bookstores? Are bookstores popular in your town? How does what you read for study differ from what you read for pleasure? After that, I ask my students to write 10 questions to ask the guest about the reading habits of Russians. Then the students are ready to act out the visit of the Russian guest. And while they are at it, I remind them that this meeting has been set up as a discussion, not as a question and answer session. And I will provide some tips to help manage the discussion well, like, for example, response phrases, I agree or I disagree. Of course, these kinds of communicative situations are prepared by students, so this is not yet spontaneous production. My ultimate goal as a language teacher is to enable my students to produce spontaneous speech. So the next step would be to facilitate participation in communication without prior preparation. I might suggest them other communicative situations. For example, you would like to try to read some Russian literature. Ask your friend if they can lend you something to read. Explain what kind of literature you like best and make sure they give you something that won't be too difficult. Or a Russian friend likes to read in English and would like to read some contemporary American literature. Tell them about the authors you like and a bit about their work, then advise them which author he is most likely to understand. So that is how the model is put to work in real life. When it is possible and appropriate, I ask the students to record the discussion so that they could listen to it afterwards and to find out, for example, whether they were able to use the suggested response phrases, or maybe there were other points in their discussion where they could have used them. And that brings us to yet another scaffolding strategy, metacognition. When both the instructor and the student control whether their learning strategy is applied correctly. Students take part being reviewers, listening to dialogues, noting mistakes, commenting, and the instructors observe to improve their own teaching strategy, noting what worked, what didn't, and how to improve the next experience. I would like to emphasize that neither of these strategies are linear. They complete a full cycle. It means that after metacognition, we have to return back to modeling and to compare the model with the outcome of the learning process. Usually it looks like that. I love this illustration, although it is not referring to a school study process, but to academic research. However, it does very accurately illustrate the situation of modeling and a real outcome. I'm sure that these basic scaffolding strategies can be applied in many different academic situations. I would be interested to learn if and how subject teachers use the scaffolding strategies. I have set up a Padlet, and I would really appreciate if you could take your time and share your scaffolding experiences with me and the others. And I will share the link to the Padlet together with my presentation. So actually, that's all that I wanted to tell you. If you have any questions, you're very welcome to ask.
Sorry, Zinta here from Australia. Can you go back to the slide that had the from metacognition to modelling, the second to last slide? I'd just like to take a quick photo of it so that I can think about it. It's 20 to 12 in Australia. My brain is fading.
Oh, sure. It's morning here.
There you go.
Okay, so after modeling, yeah, when we present to students the model.
Just the summary one with all the blue.
Yeah, sure. Here is the second
one. Yeah, that one. Yep. And I think a lot of that, oh, sorry, other people might be listening. I think a lot of that is what I do without really being able to articulate it, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, if somebody had to ask me to explain, but that is what has to happen. And I'm really, I'm pleased that I stayed awake to listen to you, because I teach year 11, what are they, 14, 15-year-olds.
Okay.
And I've taken on their language and culture class. And one of our tasks is this conversation. And I have been really struggling with how to make it authentic without them having to do a reading, because I need to move them from speaking to that sort of more autonomous level.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've got some ideas. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and as well thoughts. And maybe some questions from audience, maybe some comments, something to share, something to add, language teachers, maybe just to say hi to Valeriya. So actually, I'm going to share a bit. I'm going to share my personal scaffolding strategy. When I was around 20, I realized that the level of my English is somewhere in a place where my legs is meeting my backbone. So quite bad. So I realized that I need to do something about that, and as long as I remembered myself, I knew that I do love comedy, and then I had to make a choice whether it's going to be British English or American English. And then I realized, well, that's going to be British English, obviously. And then to conclude, I figured out the TV show named How Not to Live Your Life. That's quite black comedy, British one, filmed in Oxford, by the way. And then I started by watching it, and then I realized, well, that doesn't help. So, and then I took the first attempt on helping myself by scaffolding my English learning. I listened to the phrase or the sentence, I stopped, and I silently, in my mind, I repeated. Then I realized that, well, this doesn't help with my pronunciation, because my pronunciation was that bad. The same as bad as my vocabulary. Then I moved on with listening the sentence, then repeating loudly, and then I realized, well, but I don't hear myself. I don't hear, what's the sound? What are those A, O, U, all the letters, and so on. And then I concluded with the full set, and that was my personal scaffolding, such as listening, then repeating, speaking out and recording, and afterwards listening. It's quite complex. Are there any easier way, Valeriya?
I'm afraid not, but actually I'm impressed with your level of metacognition, because you took British comedy as a model, and that's pretty complicated. As for me, many years ago, I took Monty Python as a model. And also, I think that I've developed quite a good metacognition, because I had to, also I repeated a lot, and I tried to act out some of these sketches. So I'm afraid that there is no other way to master it, just putting it into practice, and to control what you do, yeah, to assess how you speak, what you speak.
Thank you. Maybe something to add, some comments, something just to wrap up, something in the audience, and as well in Zoom. So thank you very much, Valeriya, for being here with us. We're happy.
Thank you for inviting.
As it's morning there in Australia, that's night, and in here this is afternoon.